What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only NIO stock and what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to break down what the news, data, and technicals are telling us about NIO and why on earth we may see more downside to come going forward. Now, I know it sounds very unfortunate, but before I say anything about this and get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire NIO community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, whether it's $1 or $100, it's up to you. You're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $3,000. And the best part is, any could be a free NIO share. This offer has been extended for another 8 days, so make sure you check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. NIO is down 5.7% at the time I'm recording this, which is very close to market close. So far, NIO is getting some more bearish signals. If you actually look at it from this standpoint, we broke below 9.5. One of the things I told you yesterday was we would try to bounce a little bit, then we'd likely end up failing and continuing to slide. I told you eventually I see NIO filling this gap down here around the 9.2s. NIO filled this gap. I was correct about that. However, I don't think we're done just yet. I think we could see a repeat of this move where NIO tries to bounce just a little bit, maybe tries to get back to 9.5 before it continues to slide down all the way to retest $9 flat, and it's going to try to fight to hold that. That's going to be a major support zone. If it fails there, well, there's another gap down here in the 8.7 zone. We're most likely going to see that get filled if it fails at 9, which I do believe the odds favor over the next couple of trading days. Now, I also want to break down what's happening to the markets. What news just came out, which is also impacting NIO to some degree. When it comes to the markets, we did see hundreds of thousands of puts being opened again. And despite that, the opening of the puts did lead to some more hedging, which led to more selling pressure for the markets. And then on top of that, we also started to see the market slide a bit more than before, as I predicted. Now, one thing worth noting is the fact that as more and more people are shorting, they have to be very careful, because if you short too hard, especially during a trading week like this, it could lead to an opposite reaction. But so far, it's not too crazy. We only have about 200,000 puts expiring tomorrow and the day after, maybe closer to like 300,000, nowhere near the millions we saw from before, but we do have quite a few for Friday. Now, this time, not Friday, Thursday, sorry about that. The market's closed on Friday. For Thursday, we have almost a million, but that doesn't matter as much at this point, because you have to remember there are going to be some instances where the bears come back and they try to smack the markets down more. The market was also overextended. We actually broke a new high today before getting a big rejection, and we're likely going to see this trend continue going forward. Now, for economic data, I just want to note that the JOLTS job openings came out, and this was actually some good news technically for the markets and the economy. So what happened was we had about 9.9 million job openings for the month of February. Compared to the consensus of 10.4 million, it's actually lower. This is a good sign, because now we're finally starting to see the jobs market get weaker. There's weakness coming in for jobs, and this is exactly what the Fed wants. It's going to incentivize them to be less hawkish, as the jobs coming in at a smaller rate is going to lead to less demand as they get filled. Less demand means inflation could once again start to cool off a little bit, but you also have to consider what happened with the oil production from OPEC plus. That's very important too. So we have some mixed data overall, but I just want to note that this did cause the market to rally a little bit in the very beginning of the day before we continue to slide. There's not too much data coming out, some mortgage data coming out in the morning, nothing too big, until we actually have tomorrow, where we have the Bullard speaking and also initial jobless claims. Bullard tends to be very hawkish, one of the most hawkish members of the Fed. So be ready for that on Thursday. On Friday, we have the unemployment rate and non-farm payrolls. So this whole week is going to be just built around unemployment and jobs numbers. Very interesting week. For NIO, one thing that's not too good is we have above average volume and we're actually dropping on it. What this means is there's higher selling pressure than before that's dictating the price. There's a lot more shorting that's going on, and this in turn is leading to NIO coming down. Also, if you look at the short volume, we had a bit of an increase. We have an uptrend now, and it's being more confirmed, especially recently when we saw these big spikes. And as of yesterday, we saw about 48% of the volume just being short. It's likely going to continue to increase as that drags NIO down. The price pairs ratio is once again starting to slide, which means NIO is underperforming compared to the market now. Barclays is now saying NIO is going to perform equal weight to the market. They did change their forecast. Earnings is going to be very important for NIO, of course. Wednesdays tend to be green 56% of the time. Once again, doesn't guarantee anything in this current cycle because NIO was already up so big over the last week and a half. And as far as the short interest goes, we actually saw about, what is this, 7.4 million NIO shares shorted just a couple of days ago. So there's a lot of shorting going on, more selling pressure than before, and the price is still continuing to slide. What do I think is going to happen to NIO going forward? Well, I just want to note that SPY is starting to actually slow down. One of the things I mentioned on this channel is the technicals were telling us that SPY was quite overextended. On the hourly, we now have a crossover on the MACD. And notice how we made a higher high today, but the RSI made a lower high. So we have this negative divergence that formed, and as a result, we've been downtrending since. I'm thinking that the market's not just going to collapse. I'm not even thinking that this is the start of the crash or anything like that. I do believe we will rebound in the future, but we have more downside to come first, meaning the market might bounce a little tomorrow into open, then continue to slide. And I do believe if we break this 407 zone, the next important level is 406.55. If we break that, then this thing will just most likely come all the way down to start filling these gaps. There's one down here at 403.8. There's another one down here, I think in the really high 300s, around 400 or so, around there. We're likely going to come all the way down to 400 very soon if we break 406.55, and the odds do favor that eventually happening very soon. Technicals are starting to turn more bearish, but I'm not too fixated on us just crashing from here. Like I said, we might bounce a little bit, then continue to drop down. I also do not see this as a major crash signal. In my opinion, the market is just pulling back from this big move it made to the upside. And there could be more room to come. Maybe it's going to establish a higher low somewhere here around the 400s, maybe even 395 to 398, maybe down there. But I would talk more about 400 first, and then we could try to bounce later on. But before the bounce comes, like I said, there's likely going to be more downside. This could be an Elliott wave sequence. I'm not too worried about that for the time being. I am seeing some more downside anyways. For the QQQ, this thing has broken below 320. That's very important, but it's still holding above 318. So the QQQ is not necessarily tanking, still holding up quite nicely. It's still above the hourly 50 EMA. In my opinion, if it breaks this 318 area, it has room to come down to about 315. If it gets a clean break, so far it's holding 318. I do believe the odds favor that. Whether it pops a little bit tomorrow, then continues to slide, it seems very likely at this point. And if it does fail right here, this 315, which is where the 50 EMA is, if we break below it, the trend could actually start to shift against the trend, which means we might start to see this thing slide even more and maybe start to fill some of these gaps down here. There's the gap down here around 313, another one way down here around 307. We might see this just cool off a bit before establishing a higher low or something like that. But the technicals are starting to favor the bears a little bit more. All right, the QQQ is not looking as bearish as SPY, at least as of right now, but it still is looking like it's going to start downtrending a little bit. Now, with that said, as the market downtrends, this will affect NIO. It's now down 6% at the time I'm recording this. I just want to note some important levels. NIO had this potential, this almost looks like a head and shoulders formation. This could be the head, the left shoulder is here. Could we be forming a right shoulder? It's possible, but it might not even form. It might just continue to slide with the markets. I think this will depend on the overall market. But anyways, here's what my view is. I believe NIO will ultimately come down to fill some of these gaps. There's basically a gap down closer to $9, another one, the 8.7s. I believe NIO will retest $9 very soon. And if it fails, then 8.7 will come pretty shortly. I know it's unfortunate, but it is what the charts are telling us. Deliveries were not that great overall. They weren't horrible, but they weren't too great. And we did have some other news. Uh, NIO actually says that Tesla can't dictate the EV prices in China and it won't partake in the price war. Now, I would be very careful with making a claim like this because we have to watch out for what's about to come in the economy. What happens in the US will affect China, and if demand starts to slow down for EVs, NIO might have to adjust prices still. Now, could you say that they're a part of the price war, even if they adjust their prices a little bit? You could argue that, but maybe not. I think they meant something very different, and that is like major price cuts. But the bottom line is, I still think that NIO has to be very careful because deliveries were not what I wanted them to be. I know that many people, the CEO, are saying that they're going to do very well, especially by Q3 and Q4. They're saying their margins are going to be very nice too. NIO does not want to adjust its margins. That's why NIO is not inclined to cut prices. But I'm just letting you know we shouldn't say this too soon. We can't speak too early. We can't claim victory too early because, first off, right now the data is suggesting that NIO is slowing down a little bit in terms of deliveries compared to like the month of February. And NIO has a lot of work to do. Now, could incline them to start cutting prices in the future? It could still happen. It's not off the table. So we have to be patient and very careful in making claims like this. But once again, if they don't end up doing this, then my question is, could they still get demand up there? We'll have to wait and see because Tesla is cutting prices like pretty hard. Also, other companies as well. And this has led to a bit of a price war. If NIO does not compete in it, how is NIO going to spur up demand again? That's what I'm wondering. I think NIO has the potential to get good demand, but could they actually get enough demand to reach their goals, to reach their targets, to get over 20,000 plus deliveries every single month? I think they need like 24,000 on average every month to meet their goals. We'll see if they could do that. I mean, it's possible. It is a real possibility, but like I said, I'm not going to speak too soon. I would rather wait and see what happens first and also see if NIO still has to adjust to what happens. Because if it happens, then NIO could still have to cut prices, excuse me. They still may have to do so. That's why we should not speak too soon. But anyways, that's just like more like longer term talk. We'll see what happens for the longer term. For the short term, NIO's share price is still looking more bearish. It's likely going to continue to drop with rebounds a little bit tomorrow and then continue to come all the way down to 9. I believe that's coming. If it breaks below 9, we have to watch 8.7. That's where the gap fill is. If that fails, 8.5 could come. But I do believe it's going to retest 9 very soon and break below it. And then we're going to see the 8s, the very high 8s, very, very soon, unfortunately. All right. So thank you all so much for listening. Have a great rest of the day. I do appreciate every single one of you for listening. NIO to the moon because the long term, the super long term, going many months and years into the future, it's still very, very bright. I'm still very bullish long term, but I do want to note that there will be some downside for the short term. I just see this as another opportunity nonetheless. Thank you and peace out.